Feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges and seeking healing? Welcome to Your Love Talk, a safe haven where you'll discover effective strategies to overcome obstacles. Join Dr. Beverly Booth as she explores inspiring tales of resilience from individuals who have triumphed over adversity, emerging stronger and more fulfilled. Unleash your inner strength and embark on a journey of transformation. Now, here's your host, Dr. Beverly.
Hi there. Welcome to Your Love Talk. If you have not done so, I would greatly appreciate you subscribing to this podcast to receive weekly inspiring episodes. Just go to the podcast tab on yourlovetalk.com and select subscribe or follow on your favorite hosting platform. Thanks so much for your support. I am so excited to welcome SUZANNE Dunn to this podcast episode today. SUZANNE is a gemologist, jewelry designer, and founder of SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry. After facing the challenges of homelessness as a single mom, she found a new purpose in inspiring and empowering women to express their stories through jewelry while embracing healing and their life's purpose. SUZANNE's story is rooted in faith, financial empowerment, and legacy building. Listen to SUZANNE's inspiring story. Hi, SUZANNE. It is so nice to have you on Your Love Talk podcast today.
Hi, thank you so very much, Beverly, for having me.
Great. We actually recently met because we were doing a podcast training and you were talking about some of the life struggles that you're going through, that you've been through, and what inspired you to even wanted to become a podcaster. So I thought it would be really good. I just really resonated with you, and I thought it would be really good to have you on my podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So what I wanted to start off with is just telling the audience about you.
So hi, everyone. My name is SUZANNE Dunn. I'm also the founder of SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry. I am a gemologist. I am a jewelry designer, and I am a mom of 3 boys. Outside of me being a mom of amazing boys, I am a jewelry storyteller. I say that because in my jewelry, SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry, we make finished pieces, and I also design custom pieces. And the whole story behind the business, or the focus of the business, is to create custom pieces or finished pieces for women who have a story to tell. Now, I believe that every person has a story to tell, and I have made it my job to honor these stories by creating jewelry that will honor their journey, and that my collectors will be able to pass down from generation to generation.
Wow, that is so creative. I love that. So what inspired you to move into the space of jewelry making?
So it started a long time ago. Back in 2002, I was working as a mental health technician, waiting to begin med school. And there was a woman by the name of Dolly, and that's the name that we're going to use. And she came in one day. She was the administrative assistant to the CFO. And she came in one day and she was crying. And I said, what's going on? And she said that her daughter was in the hospital. She had an asthma attack and she was in the hospital. The daughter was 5 and she was there by herself. And I said, Dolly, why are you here? And she said, well, because my husband would kill me if I lose a job. I said, but you have to go home. And she said, I know. But she said, I'm going to call her Sylvia. I'm going to speak to Sylvia and see if I can go home. So we started packing her things up. And then she went into the office to speak to Sylvia, and she came out crying. And I said, Dolly, what's going on? And she said, before she could say anything, Sylvia came out with her hand at her, Kimbo, and she said, so what's it going to be? Your job or your daughter?
Wow.
And I didn't have kids at the time, but I knew that was all wrong. And I remember I ran home because I lived very close, and I ran home that day. I left my car, I left everything. I cried and I said, God, I can't. I was waiting to get into med school, but I said, Lord, I need something on my own. I need to do something on the side that I can do on my own, and I don't have to make a decision between my job and the children that I pray I will have one day. And so I went into 3 days of fasting. I'm a believer. And in those 3 days, the Holy Spirit laid it on my heart that I should create jewelry. I should sell jewelry. The funny thing about that is that I was attending a church that didn't allow us to wear jewelry. We can wear jewelry, we can wear pants, you can wear anything.
Wow.
I said, great. So you've given me something that's going to get me kicked out of the church.
Wow.
So I went ahead and I ordered some pieces online, and they came. And when I looked at them, I screamed, I cried. They were hideous. I was like, I cannot sell this. I went back into prayer, and the Holy Spirit laid it on my heart again that I need to create the jewelry. Up until that point, I had never created anything besides like bottle cap necklaces, with bottle caps, and I'm from
Yes.
Jamaica, and shells, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I prayed again, and I started ordering tools and saying, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this. And long and short of the story is that I was self-taught at first, or I should say Holy Spirit taught at first. And then I started to feel like there was a void, because I felt really bad calling myself a jewelry designer and I had no formal training. So then I ended up enrolling for the GIA. And there I did my gemology degree, and I also did my jewelry design degree, distance courses. And that's when I started making fine jewelry. And in 2015, I moved to New York, and I went through a separation/divorce. And by 2016, I said, okay, it's time for me to start this line. But as I was going through that journey and years were passing, I was meeting women who had stories to tell. Mm. So because of the divorce, I ended up having to move from a beautiful duplex that we were living in New York to an illegal basement. And in that process, I met a woman, I'm going to say Tracy, her name Tracy, at one of the organizations that I went to get help. And she was there with her daughter. And, I asked her, we started talking, and I said, why are you here? And she said, well, I'm living in an illegal basement and I have to get out. I said, when? She said, tomorrow. So I said, have you packed? And she said, well, not really, because I don't have any garbage bags as yet. And I said, okay. And she said, but I don't have the money. And I felt so bad because I was so down at that part in my time in my life. I didn't have the money to give her. And she said, it's okay. It's okay. I'll just have my daughter's father pick me up. And I'm going to have to do a few things, but at least he'll give me the money. Beverly, I immediately became dumb. I'm just like, what are you talking about, a few things? And she looked at me. She said, things that we women do. I said, for garbage bags? And that was when I really resolved in my heart that not only did I have to start this jewelry business that would tell stories of women, but I had to start a business that I would be able to give back. I would be able to empower women like Tracy. I would be able to train them in the jewelry business and either employ them if they wanted to be employed by me, or they could take their skill back into the community and stand on their feet, because I said that's unacceptable. And then the fast forwarding, I lived in the illegal basement, and I launched in 2021, while we were still there, I launched SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry while living in, and I say illegal because I stress illegal because it was illegal, we couldn't take furniture in. And so we were sleeping on mattresses on the floor.
Oh my goodness.
And that is when I launched SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry. And It was only God, it was only faith. And then less than a year later, the basement flooded.
Oh my gosh.
We ended up moving to a New York City homeless shelter. Myself and my 3 kids under the age of 14, 3 boys. And it was there that I learned many lessons, one of them being gratitude. But it was also there that I designed my second collection, mantra, for SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry. And it's, we were there for 8 months, and God took us through, and he saw us through, and we made it out and got into permanent housing. And since then, it's been like up.
Oh my goodness. Like, what a story. And to be in a place where, number one, you went through a divorce. And I think when I heard your story before about going through a divorce, the reason why I was like, I got to have you on my podcast is because part of what inspired me to even do this podcast is going through a divorce myself, and just being able to be in that place of starting over, not only just financially, but also emotionally and mentally, and so to go through that story where you actually had to lose your home and to be in a homeless shelter, especially with boys. And I know that sometimes it's difficult to get into a homeless program, especially with boys. And how did you manage that emotionally? And how did your children also deal with being in a homeless shelter for 8 months?
So I have to say, first and foremost, I have to say it was only God. Every day, it was just me reminding myself that in Joshua 1 verse 9, he says that he will never leave me. He will never forsake me. And then wherever I go, he'll be there with me. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. It was just constantly reminding myself of the word of God. But I must say, God has blessed me with amazing children. I remember the first morning that we moved in, it was a Thursday. We got in there about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so the kids didn't go to school that day. And at about 6 o'clock, my 7-year-old runs into the room and he's screaming, Mommy, it's snowing. And I said, okay. And this is after having the last 3 hours just crying.
Yeah.
So let me backtrack a little bit. Us going into that homeless shelter, it was a blessing because that was the first time that my kids had slept on beds, real beds, in 2.5 years.
Wow.
And when I walked into that shelter that first night, into the apartment, I realized that God is an awesome God. And something that I had thought would have been, I've always thought of it and I've always said, oh my God, I pray that would never happen. Even when my husband walked out and I realized I couldn't pay the rent because I was a stay-at-home mom, I'm like, I can't afford this rent in New York City. And I kept saying, just Lord, don't let me go in a shelter. Don't let me go in a shelter. And it was my biggest fear. And that Thursday morning when I walked into that apartment, having gone through a whole night of questioning at the processing center and just feeling humiliated, feeling down, just saying, God, where are you? I walked into that apartment and I saw beds.
Oh my gosh.
And my kids screamed out, beds, Mom, we have beds.
Wow.
And Beverly, that verse that says that God will turn all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. Yeah. God used a situation that was the worst thing that could have happened to me in my head.
Yeah.
And he allowed my children to be able to sleep on beds.
Oh my God.
So that morning, but it didn't last long because that feeling of gratitude, I'm going to be very honest, it didn't last for long because once I put them to bed, I started crying again because I'm saying, Suzanne, what have you done? Your children are now in a homeless shelter. You have your degrees, you have your masters. This is not you. What's happening? Where is God? And I cried myself to sleep. So at 6 o'clock, the little 6-year-old, he comes running in. He's like, Mom, it's snowing. And I said, okay. And he's like, but look at the windows, because we had huge windows. He said, Mom, I'm now seeing the clean snow. I can see the clean snow. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, when we were in the basement, the windows were so tiny and we were under the house. So the only thing we could see is the dirty snow after the cars had driven on it, after people had walked on it. We weren't able to see clean snow. And he said, I can see the snow. And Beverly, he sat there for about half an hour, just looking at the window, looking down, looking at the snow and saying, thank you, God. And I was humbled because my 6-year-old in that shelter taught me what gratitude was.
Oh my gosh.
And so I realized that if he knows what gratitude is, then I needed to step my game up. And so, you asked, how did I get the kids through? It was just praying a lot, asking God to help me to lead them and to guide them in this situation. But God allowed me to have, because of that whole gratitude story, that window story, he allowed me to be able to see the glass as half full instead of half empty. And so because I saw it half full, my kids then started seeing it half full. And I remember one day when they were looking a little bit down, I said, let's go get some cookie mix. And we bought cookie mix. And because it was an apartment. When it's a family shelter, you have like a kitchen, there's a little dining area. It's a whole thing that I didn't know before I got there. But we bought cookie mix and we made cookies and things like that. Just, it brought their spirits up. That's how we got through. Just trusting God and just knowing that we are so much better here than where we were when we were, sleeping on the floor. And just a lot of gratitude.
That is such an amazing story. It's funny because even though you were in this basement, you thought, okay, well, I'm in a basement, I'm not in a shelter. And so you were praying that you would not get into a homeless shelter because the thought of being homeless, I'm sure just psychologically is so difficult.
Yes.
But God said, at this point in your life, you need a homeless shelter for safety, for protection, to be able, even though it felt like in that moment that, you weren't going to have what you needed, God allowed you to have what you needed at that moment. And that's such an amazing story, Suzanne. So do you feel like that experience has actually shaped your children in how they think today? And do they still have that level of gratitude?
Yeah, it did. I wasn't sure that it was going to be long lasting. I wasn't sure if that gratitude that they felt, I wasn't sure, but I realized that it did. So from that homeless shelter, my eldest, he was in a program, a very rigorous academic program that would help him to move from a public school into an independent private school. And all while we were in that shelter, he was studying. He was studying, he was doing, and it was a rigorous program. But at the end of the day, he got through and was successful, and he ended up going to a boarding school, a private boarding school out there in Delaware, and which he loves. So, and he left, that's another story, but he left from the shelter to go to a boarding school.
What?
And I don't know if, like, you or your listeners or viewers really understand, like, the magnitude of that step. He moved from living in a homeless shelter to school that has people of affluence, a whole different world. And I said, oh my gosh, I wonder how this is going to work out. But it worked. He transitioned because you know what? One thing I must say that I did while we were in that shelter is I always told my boys, and even before that, I always told them that they're princes. I said, you're princes. And I said, whether you are a prince in a palace or a castle or a prince in a pigsty, you're still a prince. That's just the matter that the fact that we're here in this shelter, it doesn't stop you from being you. It means it's a stop in the road. It's something that we had to go through or we're going through, but it's not something that's going to change who you are.
Yes.
And so when I saw him leave the shelter and head to school, it's like he was unscathed. He went, it was without a hitch, nothing. He just right in. And that was for high school. So that was 9th grade. So by 10th grade, he did a speech for his school and he spoke about the shelter experience. And I was shocked. I said, Ethan, you actually did that. And he said, yes. I said, how did you feel? He said, you know what, Mom? I felt good. Mm-hmm. He said, because I learned so much during that time. I learned how to be grateful. I learned that it's not the home that we lived in. He said, because, Mom, before that we were living, and when Dad was around, we were going to tennis classes and music classes, and we were learning different languages and traveling like every quarter. And then we lost all of that. But he said, when we lost all of that, I realized that I didn't lose who I was. And so that's why he decided to share. And my other two younger ones, God bless them. Again, God has been so good to me. But they went off without a hitch, no problems. Even now, if something happens in the house or something happened the other day, and my little one, who is now the 6-year-old, who is now almost 10, he said, at least we're not on the floor. Something happened. And he said, at least we're not on the floor.
He remembers.
He remembered. He's like, we have a roof. So you know what? God has been good. God has been good. They have remained grateful and they have learned a lot.
My goodness. So did your older son get into this boarding school because as academic and it was actually free for him?
So we did end up paying something. I do end up paying a portion, but yes, it was academic, and that was God, because here he is going through, and I was very concerned because we're going through this period that we've never experienced before. And my kids, especially him, he never missed a beat. He was a straight A student going in. He was a straight A student coming out of the shelter. And because of that, he was able to academically prove that he was academically ready to go to this program. And yeah, he got accepted.
Amazing. God is truly so good.
Yes.
And one of the things I realized, because, sometimes even my child, she has a lot of opportunities, lots of privileges. And even as a young Black teen girl, just trying to instill the importance of taking life more seriously, even as a teenager, understanding the privilege, taking advantage of all that's in front of her. And sometimes you don't always fully, as a teenager, grasp it until you've been through things. And I truly believe that even when you go through adversities, it's really the lessons that you learn from it and how you then begin to have this mindset that you can actually overcome whatever it is that you're going through. So that's so amazing.
True. For teenagers, it's difficult. And that's why I was a little bit concerned, especially him being a young Black boy. I was thinking, how is this going to shape him and how is this? But God does it. When he's in a situation, he turns it around.
Yeah.
He turns it around.
So what about your ex? Did your ex ever come back into their lives? Are you co-parenting now?
So we're co-parenting to a point. He is in another state. He did come back into their lives. So they speak from time to time, but like nothing that I would say. They speak from time to time. And even that, I wasn't sure how they were going to deal with it. But because what I didn't want is that I didn't want them to resent him, regardless of everything that we had gone through. I kept telling them that at the end of the day, he's your dad. And the Bible says that you need to honor your mother and your father. And so even to this day in my home, I do not allow them to say anything negative. They'll say, well, he's a little bit different, or we just, but I don't allow them to go too far. Maybe in their heads they do, I don't know, but I don't allow them to speak it, because I said at the end of the day, we have to respect the fact that he's your dad. We don't like what he did. We don't understand what he did, but he's your dad. And so you're going to respect him. And so as we're going through that period, the homeless period, I was like, what's going to happen? Because of course they're now thinking, and they said little things like, if he hadn't done what he did, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have lost the life that we know. And so it was just me constantly just reminding them that this is a bump in the road. He did what he did. We can't change what people do, but we can change how we react to what people do. And in this time, it's unfortunate, they're young, but they just had to learn quickly. You just have to control what you can control and leave the rest to God and leave that whole thing. Leave him and everything to God.
And you know what? Honestly, Suzanne, that's a great message. And it speaks a lot about you and being able to be in a place of forgiveness and to also help your kids to forgive and to move forward and to still have a relationship with their dad, regardless of whatever's happened. So I really admire that about you. So you did this all on your own, in terms of just managing to get back on your feet. Were there any support systems in place for you, like family members, friends, that you were able to talk to help you through some of this process?
I was able to speak to some friends, and they became my real support. To be honest, my family members, we didn't talk that much about it. And that's the truth. I realized that some situations, I think, scare people. And I had a few family members who, when they found out, it was so out of it was something that was so far from them. Mentally, they couldn't even process it. And so I realized that they were not going to be the support that I needed at that time. But yes, God did place some wonderful people, friends in my life, and I was able to speak to them. They were able to many times, talk me down from the proverbial lead when I would call, and I'm just like, oh, it's a bad day. It's a bad day. But yes, I did have the support of others. And again, I was blessed because I did meet women with children in the shelter who had no support. I met women who were there. They were here in the United States. They had no friends, no family, no nothing. And so I realized that I was blessed. I was in that situation, but in every step of the way, every turn, I realized I was really blessed.
Yeah. I want you to talk a little bit about those 8 months. And in those 8 months, you had to somehow you had to have a mindset that allowed you to become an overcomer.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what that mindset was like? Obviously, your son said, oh my gosh, mommy, look at the snow. We've got bigger windows we can see. And that really helped you to have this heart of gratitude. But what were some of the things that you did to help you to manage and maneuver through those 8 months to get to the place of becoming an overcomer?
I've said it so many times. I love to say it again, but I know somebody is going to say, oh, she's saying it again. God. I remember one day, I think within the first week of being there, I said to myself, Suzanne, you have been going to church since you could remember. Like my mom took me to church, I think the day she had me, I believe. And so I was raised in church and had been going to church. And I said, Suzanne, you can't let all those years go to waste. Like all those Sundays that you went to church, and I grew up in Jamaica, going to church from 8 o'clock in the morning to almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you must have learned something.
Wow.
What did you learn? And what I learned was that regardless of what your situation looks like, God is with you. If you're in the flood, I remember there's a verse, if you're in the flood, you won't be overtaken. If you are in the fire, you won't get burned. And it was challenging because being in a shelter, especially with children, it's a mental thing. It's completely mental. It's so mental that is what determines when you get out. Because I got in there, and I remember when I met my caseworker, I said, okay, so what are we looking at? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a week? She said, what? No. She said, at least a year. I said, a year? Yeah, a year where? And she said, here. And she said, some people are here for like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I said, why are they here for 3 years? And she said, well, they're unable to find a place. They're unable. I said, no. And that's when I said, no, I will be out of here. The quickest person, this will be the shortest stay. And I remember just going back to God and saying, Lord, I get it. I'm here, but I can't be here. I said, first of all, I can't spend my birthday here. And my birthday was the 4th of October. I said, I cannot spend my birthday here.
Okay.
And it was just a mental thing. It was just me speaking words, affirmations. And that's why the second collection mantra was born, because every day I had to remind myself that I am loved. I am blessed. And I had never been an affirmation girl before that. But I said, at this point, I'm willing to do anything. So outside of praying, I would say my affirmations. I am loved. I am blessed. I have faith, God will never leave me. And just going through the Bible and looking through promises in the Bible and literally getting Google and listing them and printing them and just saying them daily. And that got me through because I realized that it was strengthening me. So those days because there were some, don't get me wrong, there were some rough days.
Yeah.
There were some days that I remember one in particular, I had looked at 8 houses that day. And at the time, I had a voucher. They'd given me a housing voucher and 8 houses. And everyone says no, nope, nope, nope. And I knew exactly why they were saying no, because they didn't want the housing voucher. And I remember going back to the shelter, and I was just like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. I
said, I've trusted you. I have not wavered. I said, even when, I felt down, I never turned around. I never cursed you. I said, Lord, I have trusted you. And I said, I have no one else. I have no one else but you at this point. I said, my children are looking to me, and so I'm looking to you. I said, 8 places that I went to didn't want me because of the voucher. But I said, you are God, and you are God of the impossible. And I said, I claim favor, and I'm going to go out again tomorrow. At that time I was working. I became a substitute teacher shortly before I went in the shelter. So that was something else. I was teaching while living in the shelter.
Yeah.
That's another story. But I said, God, I'm going to go out tomorrow again after work, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep looking until I find a place that is suitable for my children. But to answer the question, it's just a lot of prayer, a lot of affirmations got me through, and just reminding myself of God's promises.
Yeah.
And talking to my friends. They were real helps. They would remind me, Suzanne, listen, you've always taught your kids that they're princes, and wherever they are, so you're a queen,
Yes.
and wherever you are, you're a queen. So get this together. And I had one friend, and I would call her, and she'd put me on a clock, and she'd say, okay, so you have 30 minutes. 30 minutes to cry, 30 minutes to scream. She said, I'll attend the pity party with you for 30 minutes. But then when you hear the clock, that alarm go off, that's it.
It's done.
And sure enough,
I love that.
30 minutes later, she's like, okay, enough. Now get up. What are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Love that. Love it. And you know what? I love the power of affirmations. It reminds me of why I created my cards, Love Talk. There are affirmations cards. There's also ones for couples, but I was actually at home one day, and these affirmations were coming to me, and they're actually more scripture verses that I switched into just regular affirmations for anybody. And they just kept coming. And I was like, what is this? So I started writing them down, and I started speaking them in my phone. And then I was driving because I had to go somewhere, and I thought, oh my goodness, they were still coming. And I realized the importance of people being able to speak these words that is going to affirm who they are.
Yes.
And especially when you're going through difficulties, to be able to affirm who you are keeps you going. And it looks like that's what you did. Beyond the prayer, beyond these words. Knowing who you are, it's not about your circumstances, but you actually know who you are. You know who you are, that you know who that God created you. Then that you were going to have this faith. And it reminds me of Job, and Job in the Bible, where
Many
Job had
days,
to
I'm
go
like, Lord,
through
I'm Job. How about
losing.
that?
Yes, losing a lot of things. It reminds me of myself too. I would say, God, I have to go through this Job experience to be able to come through and trust you to go and get on the other side. But that's what you did. And to be able to be in that place of even having the mindset that you had to get out of there by your birthday.
And I will have you know, I got up by the 1st of October.
Yeah, so you did it. Yeah, but having that mindset that no matter what, you were going to achieve this goal and nothing was going to get in your way. And even though there were discouraging times, you still kept going. Amazing. What were the lessons learned from your experience?
That big windows are a blessing.
I missed that one. Say that one more time.
I said that big windows are a blessing.
Big windows. Big windows are a blessing. Even snow.
Even snow. Snow is a blessing. Snow is a blessing.
Yeah.
Lessons I learned, gratitude.
Yeah.
And so even today, when I start my day, I start, with prayer, but I also find 5 things that I need to be thankful for, that I need to say I am grateful for. And I try not to repeat those things. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I find myself grasping for little things, but in the grasping, that's when I really realize that everything that God has given us, everything we have, we need to be grateful for. Yeah. What else did I learn? I also learned that children are very resilient. They're resilient. However, they take their cues. We as parents need to understand that they take their cues from us. So although children are resilient by nature, how we as parents deal with situations and look at situations and speak about situations really affects our children. Because there were days when I was down and I would see the energy of my kids go down. And for example, the cookie story. It was on one of those days that I didn't even want to get out of bed. It was a Saturday. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to have to shower. I said, Lord, I don't even have the bandwidth to have a shower at this point. Yeah. I just want to stay in this bed. Because that was about 3 months in. I said, Lord, I can't. I can't. But with you, I can do all things. But on my own, I cannot. Yeah. And when I finally got out of the bed and I looked at the kids, I walked outside and I looked at them. They were all down and they were like, Mom, you're not feeling well. And I realized what was happening. So that's when I said, okay, guys, let's go buy some cookie dough. Let's do this. And we turned it into a cookie afternoon, a baking afternoon. And I saw their spirits lift. And it really, really confirmed that, okay, Suzanne, I get it. You're going through a lot. However, you have these kids that you have to pull through. So I learned we have to keep going and the importance of what we say around our children. What else did I learn? I also learned firsthand that there's a huge stigma on homelessness. Mm-hmm. So before I became homeless, it baffled me because I honestly didn't understand. And I'm like, how could it happen? And then when it happened, I realized, it's actually easier than I thought. Because before we went into the shelter, when we were married, when my ex and I were married, I was a stay-at-home mom. And then I tried getting jobs because my background is interior architecture. And I'd been out of the field for so long, no one wanted to hire me because they said, you've been out for so long. And I'm like, but I know the things. I've been keeping up with my certifications. But you've been out. Mm-hmm. And so I was like a pariah. No one wanted to touch me. And a friend of mine said, have you ever thought about substitute teaching? Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? No, I've never thought about that. And it was then that I started substitute teaching. And even with substitute teaching and doing like after school programs, working in the after school program, in New York City, I still wasn't able to get an apartment on my own. And that's why when the basement flooded, I still didn't have the money to go into my own place because here you have to be making on paper 40 times your rent. Oh, wow. So if your rent is $3,000 a month, which is now cheap in New York, you have to show on paper you're making $120,000. Wow. And I couldn't prove that. And so I knew that, listen, if I'd gotten into a place, I would have done whatever I have to do. Because, we moms, we do what we have to do to pay bills. We get it done. But that initial paperwork of the 40 times the rent plus the 3 times down. So if the rent is 3,000, you're talking about a $9,000 down payment. But what I learned in that whole experience is that this can happen to anyone. Homelessness can happen to anyone, and it can happen like that. So from that, I said, you know what, I need to start, and I haven't as yet, but I am going to, because I did reach out to one organization. I need to start. I would love to be the voice or a voice of homelessness, because there's such a stigma attached. I would go with the voucher and people would ask, oh, so you have the voucher? Yes. I had a few people ask, oh, they weren't supposed to. Are you homeless? And I lied sometimes and I said no, and sometimes I'm like, yes. But I would tell them exactly why, and it wouldn't help. And so I learned that the homeless population, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
There needs to be more voices like my own to give it a real face. And the way how the media loves to portray homelessness, it's not all that. That's not what all the situations look like. And there are many cases like my own of people was a 2-income family, no, it's a 1-income family, and different things. What else did I learn?
And so Suzanne, that's such an important message, because again, you educated, you even were able to work, but it still wasn't enough. And you're right. I think the media does play or show these images of people on the street, or we see people on the street, but that's not the typical homeless families. And being able to give this voice about what homelessness is and to work on removing the stigma is really so important. I actually have my daughter sign up. I signed her up to work with a family shelter release for women with children and they're homeless, just for her to get the understanding that can happen to anybody, and to be able to have that heart of compassion. I did some work with them for about a year, and I realized just the importance of educating people about homelessness, especially women and children. I also like what you said. Children do mirror their parents. They can look at you and they can see, okay, is she depressed today? Is she happy today? Or sometimes we try to fake it, but they can still sense that energy in the room. And my daughter picks up on mine all the time. But being able to mirror what it is that we want, them to see that, okay, even though you're going through a difficult time, I can still get through that. I can still move through it. And I can cry, but I can still get up. You know what I mean? Right. Just like your friend said, go ahead, you have 30 minutes, go ahead and cry. But then you know what? You can't stay there crying all the time. Express your feelings, but after a while, you have to get up and do something about it so that change can actually happen. Mm-hmm. Love that. Suzanne, for those who are struggling, going through just the challenges of life, whether it's homelessness, whether it's going through a separation and don't know what their next steps are, what would you tell folks who need encouragement and they don't know how to get it?
First thing I would say is show yourself some grace. I think many times it's easier for us to show others grace than we show ourselves. We show others more grace and we give them more grace than we give ourselves. So give yourself some grace. Is it possible or do our actions lead to consequences? Yes. Is it possible that that person could have done something or made decisions that they're now second guessing and that's what took them to that place? Yes. But I would like them to understand that it's not the end. Mm. And the fact that they're here watching this podcast means that God gave them, He woke them up today and He has given them another day to work this out. Take one step at a time. Take one step at a time. If all you can do that day, let's say yesterday you didn't have a shower because you weren't able to get out of bed. Today, get out of the bed, have a shower, do your hair, and smile. And tell yourself, be grateful that you were able to take the shower today, because that's one step in the right direction. Because many times when you're in a situation like mine and just any challenging situation, you want to have everything work at the same time. Mm-hmm. And most times it doesn't work like that. It just requires you to take one step every day in the right direction. And then you'll find that you'll be where you want to be. Is it in your timing? No, sometimes it takes a little longer, but you just have to keep going. What else I'd also like to tell them that they're not alone. And whether they believe in God or not, whether they are angry with Him or not, He loves them tremendously. and he'll never stop loving them. And it's very scary. It's possibly very scary, where they are now, but he's there and he's honestly just a prayer away. And I believe firmly, one of the taglines of SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry is that we're created for the journey. I believe that we as human beings, God has put every single thing in us that we need to walk out our own journey. He has given me everything that I need to walk my journey, regardless of how messy it is. And what he has given me, I can't walk your journey because he has given you exactly what you need to walk your journey.
Like that.
But each of us has been given what we need to walk our journey, whether it's a messy journey, whether it's a zigzag journey, whether it's a straight journey. Every single thing is already in us. It's just for us to own that and to understand that, and just for us to tap into that. Another thing that I would like them to know is many times we go through things and it's not for us. I'll explain. So as I was in that shelter, I realized that, yes, I'm going through it, but I said, this is a testimony, because there are women and men going through this situation who need to hear someone, and they need to see the face of someone who was there, who understands. So when someone says, I'm living in a shelter, and they say, I'm living in a shelter and I feel like I'm climbing the walls. I feel like I'm worthless. I feel like nothing is, I can honestly say I get it because I've walked the walk. And so every day I determine not to use my story, not to see my story as a woe is me story, but as an opportunity to tell someone or to tell everyone that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And when you do get through that challenging period, you need to turn that test into a testimony.
Yes.
Because there are people who, our testimonies strengthen people. They give them the ability to see themselves and to say, you know what, she was there, so I can do it. And so my final message is, your test is a testimony. You're going through this thing, but it's not to break you. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. I promise it's not going to kill you. It's to strengthen you. It's to maybe open your eyes to something else that you might have missed. But more than anything else, you need to then turn around. Once you're out of that, you need to turn around and use that test that you went through to help someone else.
Yes.
Because someone needs to hear your message. Someone needs to hear your story. Your story is important. And that's why even with SUZANNE Dunn Jewelry, I'm so big on stories. So the custom jewelry process, I call it Love to Legacy. Mm-hmm. It's a Love to Legacy process. And I honor women's stories. And I understand that some of my collectors, they have real messy stories. And after talking in that first consultation, they'll realize, wow, there's actually beauty in my story. And I'm like, yes, every story needs to be celebrated. I don't care what it is. It needs to be celebrated because it's your story. It's a part of your journey, and it has made you who you are today.
I love that, SUZANNE. I totally agree. We go through testing, but in the end, it's really about the testimony that's going to come through it, and to be able to help somebody else with that testimony. And I always believe that when we go through difficulties in life, whatever challenges, that is how we grow. If everything was smooth, we would never be able to understand what it is to go through struggle and to get to the other side and to become an overcomer and to become resilient. And I truly believe that God does put us through, allows choices we make. But, I truly believe what we sow is what we're going to reap. But we'll go through challenges because he does want us to grow and to have lessons so that we can actually help somebody else. So, and just hearing your story of resilience is just so amazing. And the other thing too, that, as you talked, came to my mind is, many people, when you're going through difficulties in life, you're going to go through sadness, depression, anxiety. Those are normal emotions that you're going to experience. However, as you said, you experience them, but you don't stay there. You can get to the other side. You can actually get up. And even though it feels like you can't, right? Because in that moment, if everything's dark, but it's being able to be in that place where you say, you know what, I'm going to get up and just do this one thing, whatever that one thing is. And then you do it again. And then you add the next thing until you get to that place where you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I don't know how I made it to the other side, but I did. Exciting. So SUZANNE, what is next for you?
What is next for me? So as you said earlier, we met on the podcast, in the podcast class. So that's my next big thing that I'm working on, just creating a podcast, which I can talk to women like you, like myself, like others, because the stories need to be told. The stories need to be told. So that's a huge thing for me because outside of that, I wouldn't have never thought of myself as a podcaster. And that was something I was praying about. And it says, do a podcast. And then I had so many confirmations. And I'm like, a podcast? I listened to that, but I have no idea how to begin, with the course. So I'm getting there. So that's the next big thing. Another thing that I'm working on is I currently work with 2 shelters here in New York. And I supply menstruation products, period product to the shelters. The story for a different day, because I know about period poverty. And that's something that I would like to raise awareness about, period poverty, because a lot of people don't realize that that's a real thing. This happens to a woman. A woman goes through her menstrual cycle every month. And depending on what's going on in your life, depending on cost money, even if it's $5 for the pack, it's still $5 that you might not have.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I am working with the National Period Alliance to raise awareness on. I also give products back to the shelters. And my third thing is I would like to start working with women, training women who have been through adversity and who just need a second chance and who are interested in the jewelry industry. I would like to start training them in jewelry design and gemology and, seeing where that goes. And after that period of training, if this is something that if working with me, something that they want to do, and I see that we're clicking and I'm like, okay, this is going to work, then they can continue on with me. I can employ them. Or if not, then they can take the skills that they learned back into the community. And that I know is going to be a biggie just to get everything going. But again, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
You are doing it, Suzanne. You are doing it. You're doing a lot of things, but those are amazing things. And those are things that's going to strengthen other women who need this kind of support. And I'm going to actually connect you with the program in Virginia that I'm working with. My daughter's going to be working with as well, because I think they would love to learn that. This is such a unique skill and gift to be able to make, fine jewelry. That's so amazing. That blows my mind. I need to learn how to do that. And a lot of women love jewelry, so to be able to make it and to make money from it and to be able to have a story to go along with it, that's just so creative.
Because everyone just needs a second chance. They just need an opportunity to do the thing or to do something, a skill. And I go back to Tracy, and she didn't have, in her head, she didn't have the skills and she didn't have the job. And she ended up doing something that she didn't have to do just to get garbage bags. And so I keep thinking of Tracy and I said, I have to do something. I have to give back.
I love it. It's wonderful. How do people find you?
So that's a story for another day, the website. So it's SUZANNEDUNN.com. However, we are still working on the website. There was an issue with another person trying to illegally take over Suzanne Dunn Jewelry, but that's something that we're working on. So unfortunately, they can't go to the website. However, I am on Instagram at Suzanne Dunn Jewelry. That's SUZANNE DUNN Jewelry, JEWELRY. That's my handle at Suzanne Dunn Jewelry on Instagram. And they can DM me there. I also have a telephone number there that they can call me on.
Are you on Facebook?
Facebook, Suzanne Dunn Jewelry also. Yeah,
okay.
The page, Suzanne Dunn Jewelry. Mm-hmm.
Sounds wonderful. And that will be in our show notes as well.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for sharing your inspiring story. It is truly inspirational, and it is a story of faith and one of hope and resilience. And I know that many people who are struggling with homelessness and just struggling with adversities in life, it gives them hope that they can get through just like you have, and really to be able to trust in something higher than them and having that faith that they can get through it is something that you have reiterated. And I know it will make a difference. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing your inspiring story. Despite the obstacles you faced, your faith in God and determination to rise above your struggles make you an overcomer. Your life serves as a reminder that God can take the brokenness we experience and turn it into purpose. You are a genuine inspiration to women navigating life's transitions, offering them hope and a path to healing. I will leave you with 3 affirmations from my Love Talk card deck. The first is, I am an overcomer and my past traumas do not define me. The second is, I walk by faith because fear no longer controls me. And the third is, I affirm myself daily as an act of love for myself. Please visit yourlovetalk.com to purchase the Love Talk affirmation and couples card deck or my book, Mended, Healing Your Heart After a Broken Relationship. To follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please visit Dr. Beverly Booth. If you have enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. This is Dr. Beverly from Your Love Talk. Blessings.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Your Love Talk. Remember, you're never alone in your struggles. Take the time to affirm yourself daily as an act of love to yourself. And know that this podcast is here to offer genuine support and guidance whenever you need it. For more insightful and transformative discussions, visit yourlovetalk.com to explore additional episodes. Take the next step forward with courage, knowing you can overcome any challenge. That's all for today. Until next time.